Hey, Choose Life Nation, it's Dallas Cohen, the Rebound Coach, and you are watching or listening to an episode of the Rebound Coach Live. I am so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for joining me. If this is your very first time joining me in my corner of the virtual world, welcome. We're so glad you're here. I happen to be in Atlanta, Georgia today. And so this is not my normal setup, but I wanted to make sure I came to you today because we have something important to talk about. Is your waiting in vain? Are you waiting in vain? And so if you're like, hey, it's my first time here, this just showed up on my feed or somebody shared this with me, I don't know who you are and what this is about. All right, here's the 30-second version. You ready? I was married to this man who wanted me dead for 10 years. I was married for 10 years to a man that wanted me dead. And he almost got the opportunity to try to take my life. And that didn't make sense for someone like me. I was raised in a good Christian home. I had parents that loved God, loved each other, were married for a lifetime, and gave a really good example of marriage and love in a relationship. At the same time, I was molested from the time I was 8 to the time I was 16. And that radically affects how you see yourself. In a household of faith, how I related to God, and as a woman or a growing woman, how I related to men. Fast forward when I met the man that I married and eventually divorced, there were definitely red flags. There were definitely reasons not to be together. But as a praying woman, I believed God's answer was yes. And because I believed that whatever came, we'd outlast it, we'd overcome it. God would swoop in and save the day and change things. And he did swoop in and save the day and change things, just not anywhere close to the way I was anticipating. We got into this cycle of what I call coping and crisis. So we're like barely making it, walking on eggshells, trying to make sure he doesn't explode, continuing to try to bend to his will and give him what he wants, and what he wants keeps changing. I was doing the whole dance, y'all, just kind of coping. And then we'd get into some big blowout crisis. So everything would tumble. It's like I was very carefully putting my life together like a little house of cards, if you remember that. And just the slightest thing would upset the whole apple cart. And so all the work would fall down, and we'd have some sort of awful crisis and start to rebuild our lives, our worlds again. And we were in that cycle for close to 10 years, over 9 years for sure. The biggest crisis happened at the end of 2019, where he left for another woman. He had always been a serial adulterer, but this time he left for another woman. And the very next day I found out him and that woman had been plotting my murder, and had been doing that for months by the time I found out about it. So needless to say, like, your whole world stops. It's a record scratch moment. Like, oh my gosh, how is this my life? It was one of those, it was one of those moments. And you're threatened on every level, as a wife, as a mom, as a woman, as a human being, as a child of God, right? But also as a coach. I had been coaching faith-based relationships and marriage for like 5 or 6 years by then. So if you can imagine building an entire identity, an entire platform, an entire message around one particular idea, and that being the very thing that's falling apart at your feet. And it's kind of like the teen pregnancy. You just can't hide it forever. And so I had important decisions to make. And by divine, I have no other describer, okay? By divine intervention, not only am I alive, but my children are alive and with me and safe. We're continuing to grow and heal and unlearn and relearn new patterns and change our legacy together, because I really could allow the identity that my ex-husband had planned for me, and the one, quite frankly, I had agreed to, tell me who I was, how I was allowed to express myself, how I was allowed to have faith or not, and who I could become, or I could choose life. So, y'all, I wrote a book, and I just realized that my book is not within arm's reach like it normally is. So I'm not in my normal setup. But I wrote a book called I Choose Life, Rewrite Your Love Story and Change Your Legacy. And it is my story. So if you're into like crime scene investigator, if you like Dateline, if that's your jam, this book is for you. If you have survived any type of betrayal, trauma, or abuse, so childhood sexual abuse, if you had a marriage with abuse in it, or any kind of abusive dynamic, this book is for you. If you care about someone who's experienced abuse or betrayal or trauma, this book is for them. It's not just my story. It's a roadmap. It's a lifeline. And a few weeks ago, I got to meet someone who had read the book in a week and told me some amazing things about her story. And I want to share that with you. I'll share Ariele's story. Ariales. Ooh, I'm not saying it right. I'm going to let her tell you her name and her story. I'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Araceli, and I'm from Massachusetts. Before reading this book, I was depressed. I was going through some issues with myself and my mindset. I thought that what I was going through was the end, and that I didn't have any solution to it, and I thought that my pain was bigger than anything else that I couldn't get out. I found this book and I picked it up right away. It brought to my attention the title, and I wanted to choose life. I read this book in a week, and when I went through it, I saw that my pain was not as hard as I thought, that I could overcome whatever obstacle and challenge and pain that I was feeling. Dallas talks so much about, seeing the light and hope and choosing to live, and just feeling like there was a solution, like there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And I love how it was a conversation between her and I. Like I was listening to a friend, and I felt like God was surrounding us, and it was just a life transformation. That when I finished the book, my mindset changed. I thought I had a new mindset. I wasn't a victim anymore, and I was able to overcome the pain. I was able to see a brighter future and go beyond. And I started making changes in my life and the way I was caring for myself. Started caring for myself. Started doing things for me, and I have changed so much in what I think and how I think about it. But it all started reading the book and applying what she coaches through the book to my life.
All right. So I always get encouraged by that. I always get encouraged by that because not only did she read it, she applied what she learned, she made changes, and it blessed her life. And it will bless you too. You can get your copy of I Choose Life at thereboundcoach.com/book. That is thereboundcoach.com/book. You can get a physical copy that I will personally sign and mail to you. I'll write you a little love note, or dedicate it to someone you care about. This is gift giving season. So if you are gift giving and you care about someone who's gone through this, buy this book for them. Or you can get one from Amazon, or you can get an ebook and they'll ship it to you without a love note. I'm saying, like, love notes are better. But get your copy at thereboundcoach.com/book. Okay. Is your waiting in vain? Y'all, something that is not new, but it's something that I just realized again that is so important. I just shared my marriage story with you. And for a really long time, I was waiting. I was waiting for things to change, and not just waiting without activity. Like, I was doing a lot of praying. I was doing a lot of book reading and research, and more prayer and more fasting, and maybe if I try this thing, maybe if we do a 72-hour prayer chain and I will get other people involved to pray with me, and we do all the things, like everything I knew how to do, and some stuff I didn't know how. I would do all the things because I wanted him to heal. I wanted him to be whole. A dynamic of this that I don't get to share in the 30-second version is that he had or has mental illness. And so that was an entire component. And I knew that before we met, or I'm sorry, not before we met, but before we married. And I believed that that was just spiritual. It was just spiritual. And it was just, God would just heal him if we fasted and prayed enough, because he really wanted to be healed, and he really loved God, and eventually God would just change him because that's what he wanted, right? That's what I believed. And so I was waiting for things to change. I was waiting for time to change things. I was waiting for God to change things. I was waiting for lots of things. But it wasn't really about any of that. It had to be him wanting to change. Now, it's easy for me to say he needed to change and he didn't want to change and it's all his fault. But we all face places and spaces in our life where we say, God, I want this thing. And that thing is on the other side of like hard work. It's on the other side of paradigm shift. It's on the other side of work. And we go, well, no, I don't really want to work. I just want the result. Like I want that thing that it costs work, but I don't want to pay that cost. I just want the thing. And it doesn't work that way, right? So in my marriage situation, it wouldn't matter how much I prayed or I tried, like he had to do work, and work that was outside of his comfort zone. And it was just that, outside of his comfort zone. So he didn't choose that. And that's not the same reason that I ended up divorced, right? But it's the reason that things didn't change. Does that make sense? So, I ended up divorced because I was no longer safe, right? Like my life was in danger and it was no longer safe to remain married. And so that's what that was about. But the pain of it, the day to day, he wasn't ready. He didn't want to stop cheating. He didn't want to. So it didn't matter how much I wanted it. If he didn't want to, it's not going to happen. I was waiting for him to change so that my life would get better. And this is all wives, I believe, experience this, probably husbands too. And many other situations where you're waiting for someone else to make a change for your life to get better. I believe this is where nagging comes from in marriage. I don't believe that women are like out to hurt their men. I don't believe that. I think that women want to be heard. So nagging comes from that. Like, I'm not heard, so I'm just going to keep talking. And also, I really need this thing to change or my life won't get better. Like, this is what we believe. The truth is, we that's not the truth, but that's something that we believe. We believe that, well, if my husband just changes, I'll be happy. If he just washes the dishes more, if he just, takes care of the laundry and helps out at home, if he just takes care of the kids, I'm going to feel better, right? My life's gonna, if he, so for my experience, it was like, well, if he just stops cheating, if he just goes to work, right? He didn't work. He didn't work. And that was a really big pain point for me. So I was like, well, if he just got a job and kept it, he'd be responsible and he'd be busy and he couldn't cheat. And then all this. So I had made up a whole strategy in my head for how he was going to get better if he only X. And then he wouldn't do that thing, right? He didn't want to. And then my life didn't get better, but I would continue to nag. Or if I couldn't nag, because that would make things really bad, I would try whatever I would try to change things, to make things better. And I remember, I want to make sure I don't miss anything here. And who might, like, if you're looking in your own life, who might you be waiting on? And sometimes it's not a spouse, sometimes it's a boss. You might be waiting for the government to change. You might be waiting for a family member. If they only got better, then this would be okay. If this would only get better, that would be okay. Or you might live in a world where you need a crisis to nurture, to manage. Like some people, like that's what they're comfortable in. They're comfortable in crisis, or they're comfortable in caring for somebody, or they need some drama. So even if there's no drama, they attract some or create some so that they're comfortable. All right, who are you waiting on for your life to get better? Who are you waiting on? Just sit with that. Who in your life are you waiting on? A boss to change or to make a different decision for your life to get better? Are you waiting on a spouse or family member to change so your life can get better? Are you waiting on your pastor to change so your life can get better? Are you waiting on the government to make decisions so your life can get better? Whatever it is, it's unfortunately misdirected. And I had to ask myself those hard questions recently. What am I waiting for? What am I waiting for? And I think, God gave me a lot of promises. And I think maybe I had been waiting for someone to discover my amazingness and like throw money at it or something. I don't know, but I had been waiting, right? And I remember when I was married, we were going through all these things, and I write about this in the book too. He had called the police. That's a long story, y'all. He had called the police to say I was dead, and it wasn't the first time, and this was one of those times that it happened. And the police I was talking to didn't do anything. They came to the house, and of course I was alive. And I'm like, listen, this is a thing. Please help take him to get services and help. And they were like, we can't take him on, for this, and that reason. And I was so heartbroken and just like, I don't know what else to do. Right. So I talked about coping in crisis when he fell into mental health crisis. That's what I did. I would call the police. They would come get him. They'd take him to treatment. After treatment, there was some rebuilding we had to do, but like I knew the drill. And this particular time, they're like, we can't take him. I was like, but this is not good. He's not okay, and it's going to get worse, and I don't know what to do. Like, calling the police was the answer I knew, and suddenly that answer wasn't going to work. And the policeman said to me that afternoon, I remember it really, really clear, and he's like, no one can change this but you. And I looked at him like, what are you talking about? Like, you are the police. I called you here to change the thing. You are the police. I called you. Or he called the police, but whatever. I fully expected them to change things, to take that fire that was on me and on my life at the moment to give me respite for a little bit, and they couldn't. And he said to me, no one can change this but you. And I didn't understand it at that time. I didn't. And I, from the police perspective, I imagine that they see that kind of stuff all the time. They see domestic violence calls. And it wasn't until we were much later preparing for court and looking through things that I'd realized how many police calls there were over the span of my marriage. I didn't even notice. I didn't even, because you're so busy surviving. Like, you can't even take into account all the crap that's happening. But that policeman was right. No one was going to change that situation except me. No one could. No one could. And I was waiting on my husband to change so that my life got better. I was waiting on the police to come in and save me, or someone to come save me. And the truth was, no one was coming to save me. Even God himself needed my cooperation, right? And it's the same for all of us. It's the same for all of us. There's nobody coming. And so when I ask you to think about who you are looking to make a decision that makes your life better, and that person needs to be you. You're the only one who can make decisions that make your life better. It's nice when other people do things we would want them to do. It's nice when they create circumstances that benefit us. That's nice, but that's not guaranteed, right? There's no full guarantees, but I can tell you the only person you control is yourself. And you're the one who's supposed to make decisions that make your life better. And I had to face that. We all have to face that. So the question becomes, what decisions will you make? What things will you do? What things can you place in your path that's going to improve your life station? Whatever that is. If you want more love in your life, you want more joy, you want more friends, you want more peace, you want more health, you want more prosperity, however you define that, right? You want more vacations, yo. Like, I want more vacations. A couple birthdays ago, I asked God for more life in my years. I was living life. I was getting through the years like I'm living life. My kids are getting older. I have lots of benefits and lots of people who love me. I wanted more life in the year. I wanted more life in the year because the time slips through, man. And I'm looking ahead like, wait a minute. What about all those promises, God? What about all those things you told me when I was young and I figured time would work itself out where I would get there and somehow I'd get there, right? I've had to face like, man, it's time for me to make decisions that move me in that direction instead of waiting for, I don't know what, the cosmos, right? Like, what the heck am I? Okay, if a boss doesn't make a certain decision, what am I left with? Am I going to live with what they say I can earn, what they say I'm allowed to do? Or am I going to go pursue the things that are on my heart, right? In the marriage I was in, was I going to wait? And I was consigned to doing that, to waiting for the man I was married to make decisions that would benefit our family. And eventually I had to face like, he's not going to make this better. Like, he's not going to make this better. I have to make this better. And it was probably the scariest decision I've ever made in my life. Probably the scariest decision. Because you really want, as your Christian wife, right? Like, you really want your husband to make decisions that make your life better. But that's not where he was. And it's ultimately my responsibility to steward the life that God gave me. God didn't give anyone else my life. He gave me my life, right? So it's the same for you. God didn't give your parents, your boyfriend or fiance or husband or your pastor or your sister friend. God didn't give, or your boss. God didn't give them your life. He gave you your life. What will you do? What will you do with your life? And so you may be facing a situation that needs to change. You may feel like you don't have control of the situation. The truth is, it is easier to wait on a savior. It's easier to wait for time to work things out. It's easier to wait for a person to swoop in and save the day, or to notice you, or to promote you, or to make your life, or to love you. Like, that's a whole other ball of wax. If you're waiting for someone to love you before you feel good about yourself, or waiting for someone to compliment you before you feel worthy, right? That's a whole other teaching. You are the person, you are the person to come do right by you. You are that person. You are that person. And I have an opportunity for you. Okay. And I have to look for my flyer because I did not prepare for it. I did not prepare for it. Okay, listen. I posted this on my Facebook page. So if you are watching here, you definitely have access to the Facebook page. Next week, this time, I'm hosting a masterclass on Zoom, a free masterclass on Zoom. It's called From Trauma to Triumph. Okay. And I will be talking about how to get yourself from survival mode, and that is where so many of us live. And it's natural and it's normal and it's good in the season of survival, but we stay in that survival mode and we lose life in the years. We may continue to live year to year, but we're losing life. We're losing love. We're losing joy. We're losing health. We're losing peace. We're losing enjoyment. And we're just clicking through the freaking days. And then we run out of days to click through and it's over. We don't get to be here forever. At some point you have to make decisions that are going to change the path for you. And you have that power. It's in your hands. I want you to join me next week. It is absolutely free. I'm going to put it in the comments, the registration link. It's on Zoom. It's a free masterclass called From Trauma to Triumph. From Trauma to Triumph. And it's at 9 p.m. So our normal get-together time is 9:30, but I wanted to do 9 p.m. because it gives us a little more time to talk. I will be sharing, but I want to hear from all of you too. So I'm going to share a little deeper than we do here on these lives. And I want you to make sure that you register. It's absolutely free. It's on Zoom, 9 o'clock, From Trauma to Triumph, because 2024 does not have to be a repeat. Y'all, 2024 does not have to be a repeat of 2023. And it's not just about like resolutions that didn't happen, like internally in your heart and your soul and your identity. There's a shift that can happen that moves you into the places where your heart has yearned to be. And we don't have to wait another year. We can make this change now. So Autumn and I have put the link in the chat. Please go there and register for next week's free masterclass From Trauma to Triumph. And don't come alone. Don't come alone. Don't come alone. There's people that you love, and you don't have to grow alone. You don't have to suffer alone. You don't have to wonder alone. You don't have to mourn alone. So don't do this alone either. All right? Bring your friends. From Trauma to Triumph. 2024 is going to be an amazing year because we're going to do the things it takes to make the year amazing. Not because it's, cosmically whatever, right? People come up with all sorts of things, but because we're going to make it a great year. Holy Spirit said something to me because he's always dropping dreams in my belly. And I'm like, when am I going to do that? And when am I going to? And he stopped me. He's like, if you don't make time for your future, you're just going to repeat your past. And Holy Spirit be coming with them humdingers like, dag. But he's absolutely right. Like he's always right. If you don't make time for your future, you're going to just repeat your past. Or your present. Right? You might just repeat the present. Year after year after year after year. Do you want that? If you're hanging out with me, it's because you're a change maker. You're someone who wants to choose life. And you don't want to keep going around that same mountain. The only way to get off the crazy train is to put your head up and be like, no, this is my stop. Let me off. I want to do something different. And you can. Like you literally can. And I'm excited. So I'm excited to share with you how to get from trauma to triumph in 2024. And we're going to talk about it next week. So don't miss your opportunity, this free masterclass. I want to see your faces and hear your voices, all the things. So I'm excited for having time with you. All right. I appreciate you. Thank you, Christina, for sharing this, for tagging your friends. If you are watching this on the replay, put in the chat replay, put in the chat who, and your reflections. I want to hear who you've been waiting for. Like, I really want you to sit with that because I sat with it, and I thought about it even in my professional life, who I've been waiting for to promote me or to make my work situation feel better. Right. And sometimes systems change, guys. So half the time it's not because we're lazy. It's because it has always worked a certain way. Like I expect this sort of experience. This is the way it's always been, and then suddenly it's not that way. And it's very different, and you'll have to learn new skills and use new muscles, but that's okay. If you're in that situation, it's because it's time to grow in that area. So if you find yourself in a new place, tell me in the chat, like, yo, this has always worked and then suddenly it didn't. All right? If you're like, man, I faced that question and really I was waiting on so and so to tell me I was worthy and good enough, right? In order for me to feel worthy and good enough. Whatever it is, whatever you're waiting for, tell me in the chat and tell me what you're going to do about it. And let me know when you register. Let me know, be like, hey, I'm in. All right. So it's next week at this time, but it won't be just on Facebook here. It will be on Zoom. So you must register at the Zoom link that we put in the chat. All right. Thank you so much for spending time with me here. Thank you, Autumn. Thank you, Christina. And if any of the friends come, thank you, Anquinette, Danielle, and Aaliyah. If you come, this is your shout out. All right. Thank you for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. I'd love to know what you got out of this in the chat. I'd love to know if I will see you next week on Zoom at our free masterclass. And until then, choose life, nation. Till next time, y'all, choose life.